Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of TCG Talk, back today with another video. And today's video, it's going to be our third of fifth video in our Contender series for the Alpha Class TCG. We're going to talk about the Contender Mean Streak. If you like this type of content, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Remember, if you're new to the channel, thank you so much. I really appreciate you stopping by. If you're a long-standing supporter, y'all are amazing as always. Keep it up. We're going to be doing lots of Alpha Class videos as the game releases. We're also going to be doing a lot of Flesh and Blood videos over the next week or two with a lot of the spoiler releases. We got a spoiler card, so that's really awesome. So be on the lookout for that. And yeah, we'll get right into it. So Mean Streak is under the blue color, at least for right now. As I've said in previous videos, right now there are 5 colors in the Alpha Class TCG coming into the first set: blue, green, red, white, and black. Each color has a contender that kind of represents them until we get more contenders and more sets. And under blue is Mean Streak. At like a base level, Mean Streak is a mid-range to aggressive deck that can play like persistent and survivable threats. It gains card advantage over time, and there's a heavy investment into like your clash zone. So it works off a streak counter type of thing where you add counters, basically like almost like counters in other card games, but these are called streak counters to your cards. And the more streak counters your cards have, the more powerful they become. So basically, your whole goal early on is to kind of slow down your opponent, get some streak counters on. But then once you get your streak counters on your cards, it turns into like a really quick tempo deck and a persistent deck. The thing with Mean Streak is, like any tempo deck, if you run out of gas or if you have a issue where you can't gain that tempo, then the deck really suffers. So it's a deck that takes a little bit finesse, similar to Moxie. Not quite as late game as Moxie is. It's more of a tempo combo deck, but it's something that is really fun. If you like any tempo type deck and from other card games, or even more of like a steady aggro deck, Mean Streak might be for you. But Mean Streak has 2 abilities. It's an alpha hero under the alpha affiliation. At 30 life, once per turn during your primary phase, you may move any number of streak counters from a clash card you control to another clash card you control. So you can't move your streak counters aimlessly all the way around, but you can move a set of counters from one card to another card. This is really important when you're wanting to maybe stack cards onto like a really powerful like swing card, but it's also really important to know because if you have a card that maybe is going to go to the Oblivion next turn, go to your graveyard, you might not be able. You might want to take the counters off of that so you don't lose them. If you know you're going to defend with a card on your defensive turn, maybe take the counters off of it so then you can defend with it and not lose your counters. So there's a little bit of finesse on when to move your counters and where. Clash cards you control with 1 or more streak counters get trigger defeat. You may draw 1 card. So this is like the give and take. You can take the counters off of your cards so you don't lose them. However, it is a little nice to maybe have 1 counter on a card just in case, so you can basically replace it with another draw. And in this game, what you'll realize is you draw up to 8 cards, and let's just say a normal turn is you put 1 card down for a resource, and then you play a card. That's 2 cards. Now you're down to 6. The next turn, you draw a card up to 7. Then you put down a resource card, play a card, you're down to 5. As you can see, like unless you have ways to replace your cards, eventually you're going to run out of cards in hand because the game naturally forces you to play more use more cards than you're drawing. It's just how it is. Either you have to skip a resource turn, find a way to have card draw, whatever it may be. So Mean Streak allows you to keep that tempo by saying, hey, if you put out a couple of chump blockers, some early game blocks with 1 streak counter on them, they're used nothing more than blocking, but they allow you to keep your card advantage and keep going. When Mean Streak gets to 10 life, it's clash cards you control with 1 or more streak counters get 1/1 and super speed. Super speed in this game is like first strike and magic. It basically means you hit them before they hit you, which is really important. It prevents your opponent from trading with you. If you have a 3/3 clash card and they have a 3/3 clash card, you're going to take out their clash card before they can hit you, and you gain advantage that way. So really, really powerful ability in the late game. So as we look at Mean Streak here, and I'll go ahead and put him up here, I always like to, I skipped it in the clarity video, and I apologize for that, but I want to show you the lore of them because it goes way deeper. I can't wait for the graphic novel to come out here in November, hopefully around that time, to kind of show like the huge lore of it. But at a baseline, Mean Streak, otherwise known as Curtis Stinner, was just a kid from the streets of Chicago, dishonorably discharged from the Army, So he was a bully and a thug in Garfield Park, Chicago, when the Awakening swept over him. So he was chosen by the Awakening, the progenitors. I always say that word wrong. Once awakened, Curtis developed super speed and agility. But what was even more unique were the streaks, black amorphous globes that emerged from Curtis. They seem to be sentient and can float around him at extreme speeds. Curtis calls them his streaks. The streaks surround him, protect him from harm, and act as scouts and confidants. No one really knows what the streaks are, including Curtis. Curtis got the name Mean Streak from Sergeant Weber after Weber had observed him in action. So it's an alpha hero or villain, how the story goes in the lore, that was chosen in the Awakening and developed these superpowers. And as you can see, it kind of bodes with his tempo style with like his lore and just kind of makes sense from there. So that's a little bit on the lore there. So the key baseline mechanic to Mean Streak is his counters, right? His streak counters. So how do you get those? Well, one way is a lot of your attacks naturally will give you streak counters. So as you can see here, he has several different iterations of Mean Streak. He has a 2-drop that says trigger, put 2 streak counters on this card, and this card gets +1, +0 for each streak counter on it. So when you put the 2-drop Mean Streak onto the field, it gets 2 streak counters, becomes a 2/2. Now you can either choose to keep buffing that card and it keeps getting like offensive power, or you can take the counters off, use it as a blocker, and use those counters somewhere more useful, like on your 3 or your 4-drop. Your 3-drop, which is honestly my favorite card of Mean Streak, it has interception, which means it can block cards that have flight. It has an on-enter trigger ability. It says put a streak counter on this card. And then also, once per turn during your primary phase, you can pay 2 resources. If you do, put a streak counter on target clash card you control. Then you draw 1 card. So this is a really big driver for what Mean Streak's wanting to do. Honestly, you want to get one of these on the field and try to keep it on the field as much as possible. And really just keep that generation, because what you can do with Mean Streak, and what my opinion is, he does have some 7 and 8 drop, like really big bomb cards that are really good. But personally, I would play Mean Streak in the 2 to 4 drop range. All you really have to do is get 5 to 6 resources on the board, and then start using those resources to generate streak counters with this 3 drop, and you really can start to snowball really fast. One of his biggest and best cards, in my opinion, is his 4 cost attack. As you see here on the right, it has super speed naturally, which is really good, so it has first strike. You may play this card without paying its resource cost by sending a T-Bone and Weber, or Mean Streak, sorry, not Weber, Mean Streak Clash card to from the Clash Zone to the Oblivion. So you basically have to sacrifice 2 cards to pay for this card if you don't want to pay its resource cost. I personally don't think it's worth it. I wouldn't give up, with Mean Streak being such a tempo deck, I wouldn't give up 2 potential good cards or useful cards for just this 1. But its abilities are really good. When this card, overall, this card, like, it's kind of your biggest driving force, because when this card defeats another Clash card, you may put 1 streak counter on it. If this card has 1 streak counter, it gets 1/1. If it has 3 streak counters, it gets Breakthrough, which basically means if it's a 3/2 and it's blocked by a 1/1, it's going to deal 2 damage to the contender. It's basically like Trample. If it has 5 or more streak counters, Clash cards you control get 2/2. And if it has 10 or more streak counters, it gets 5/5. So it's not that hard to put 5 streak counters on this card. There's a lot of ways to make streak counters with Mean Streak. And overall, I think this is probably one of your best cards, because if you can get 5 streak counters on this card with maybe 2 other cards on the field, all of a sudden this card is going to come in for 1/1 from its 1 streak counter power, and then it's going to come in 2/2 more, so 3/3 total. So it's going to come in for 6/5, and then all your other cards are going to come in for 2/2 as well. So like, let's say you had the 2-drop, the 3-drop, and the 4-drop on the field. Your 2-drop is going to be a 2/4. Your 3-drop is going to be a 5/5, and then this card will be a 6/5, right? So really, really useful, and I think it's one of the biggest driving forces to really overwhelm your opponent in the mid-game. As you can see, all of these naturally put streak counters on them. So as long as you can keep them on the field and manage where your streak counters are going efficiently and not lose them, you can really snowball your opponent. So there's other ways to make streak counters as well, and that's your streak makers. So these are some of the ones. You have Lefty on the way and Streaks Engaged. These are simply just play the card, get streak counters. Pay 1 resource on a basic action, put 1 streak counter on target Clash card you control. Streaks Engaged says put 1 streak counter on each of up to 2 clash cards you control. So get 1 counter on this card. You have 3 resources. You get 3 streak counters, right? And you can run 4 of each of these in your deck and really start to stack the streak counters really fast. Like I said, Mean Streak does have some big 7 and 8 resource cards, but personally, I think Mean Streak's going to work best when it comes to playing in like the 1 to 5 resource range, because you can really outvalue your opponent in the late game. And even in the mid game. So these are really good for making streak counters. You can see how you'll snowball easily. So the question is, how do you slow down your opponent enough to get those streak counters on? And that's where blue comes into play. Like blue in every card game, the control aspect or the defensive aspect is usually pretty high. Now, blue in this game, at least from what I've seen so far, doesn't have a ton of straight removal like other blue does in other games, but it has a lot of damage reduction. Arguably the best in the game right now of any color. So you have Streak Absorbing Blow, which is a counterattack that target attacking clash card gets -2, -1 until end of turn. This is really good in the early game. If you have someone hitting you with a 1/1 or even a 2/1, then it allows you to not obstruct it, hit it back with your contender, and kill the card, right? Because you've trapped it, and now a 2/1's all of a sudden hitting for 0/0. You have Lefty's Last Stand, which is a counterattack that says prevent all clash damage that would be dealt to target attacking clash card during this clash. So basically it's damage, straight damage reduction. But it's not like there's other cards in the game that say prevent all damage from this clash period. This one says prevent all damage being dealt to you. It doesn't say prevent the damage being dealt back, right? So if someone's hitting you with a 3/3 and you block it with a 3/3, but you play Lefty's Last Stand, they'd hit you for nothing, and you hit them and you eliminate their clash card. Then you have Better Luck Next Time, which for the value is just great. Being able to give a card -3 for 2 resources is really, really good and really, really efficient. So Mean Streak has the ability to slow down the opponent enough. And honestly, when you combine it, if I can go back here for 2 seconds, when you combine it with some of his attacks, he also has a 1-drop that's I believe a 1/0 or 0/1 that gives defense when it has streak counters. So when you combine that with the damage reduction with the clash buffs, you're able to really like trick your opponent into attacking you. You take out their card with defense, and then you keep your advantage. So it's really, really good for that. So now we get into like what does the Mean Streak pair with? I think the 2 best colors for Mean Streak are white and green. I don't have green examples up here because I'm still tinkering with green and figuring out the best way to do it. But the Haven cards in white and blue naturally have a really good synergy with Mean Streak. You have Haven Hiding in Plain Sight, which is a 1/2. It says choose 1. Your contender gains 2 health, which is good for Mean Streak, or draw a card so it replaces itself. Really good for that. The 1-drop Haven also draws a card, so it replaces itself. And then Haven Bountiful Collector allows you to like ramp your resources if you need to. All of these pair really well with San Francisco because San Francisco is a 3-drop Clash Ground, which gives Alpha Clash cards 2/2, but also gives Alpha and Rogue cards Interception. Now, these Haven cards are Rogue cards, and even in blue and white, so you at least can buff those as well. Because what I'm noticing with the Clash Grounds is when you start to mix colors, your Clash Grounds aren't as effective because they don't always work for all of your cards. However, San Francisco is really nice because it gives all your like big attacks that you're wanting to attack with 2/2, and it's giving these cards Interception, which in my opinion, the Havens are for 2 reasons. They're one for card draw because all of them have it, or mana ramp, and then they're good blockers. They all come in at 1/2, which is really, really nice. And so you're basically going to use them for blocker after you play them. And the fact that you can give them Interception to block flight cards so you don't get damage dealt to your contender is really good to stay alive in the late game. So that's Mean Streak. As you can see, Mean Streak's a really big tempo deck. There's a lot of intricacies with how to manage your streak resource. But in the late game, being able to give all your cards basically 1/1 is really nice, and super speed. Basically, if Mean Streak has like 2 or 3 Clash cards on the field and you put him below 10 life, you're in really big trouble. You just gave his whole board first strike, which is pretty nuts. So I really enjoy Mean Streak. I think Mean Streak, honestly, from face value, from what I've been seeing with all the contenders, is probably the most solid contender. Like Clarity is the most flexible. I think Magnate is the easiest to play. And Torque is really oppressive as well if you don't know how to play around him. Mean Streak is just like a solid, good. I think like if you had S to D tier in heroes or contenders, Mean Streak's always going to be at like your A tier. It may not be the best deck, at least in my opinion, but it's like always going to be in the top section because it just has a really good game plan. And if you know how to control your counters, you can be really effective. So hopefully you like this type of content. Hopefully you like Mean Streak. Let me know what you think of him as a contender. I'm really excited to mess with him and play with him, see how he goes. I really want to take the 4 drop that gives all your cards 2/2 and give it 5 counters and like just stack counters on counters. Really excited for that. But yeah, let me know what you think. If you like this type of content, please leave a like, comment, subscribe. Hopefully this helps you. If you're new to Alpha Clash, you're interested in the game, or you're trying to learn more, or you've been playing it longer than me, give me some feedback in the comments. Let me know what you think of the hero. Let me know if there's anything I'm not thinking of as a whole when it comes to giving this deck profile. And yeah, hopefully this was helpful. Thank you all so much. Y'all have a nice day. I'll see you next time on TCG Talk.